Enemy of the state.
Enemy of the state.
Enemy of the state.
Dank Pod-Stash.
You're listening to Enemy of the State's Dank Pod-Stash. Check out thedankpodstash.com to find every episode of the Dank Pod-Stash, links to support the show via our BitBacker and Patreon, Dank Pod-Stash merchandise, and much more. If you'd like to advertise on the Dank Pod-Stash, email us at dankpodstash@gmail.com. Oh yeah, you found yourself back again for another episode of Enemy of the State's Dank Pod-Stash. And before we get started with the show with the great Spike Cohen, we're going to talk to you real quick about Liberty Under Attack publications. If you go to libertyunderattack.com, you get 10% off your order by using the coupon code DANK10, DANK10. Shane Radliff over there, friend of the show, has all kinds of cool books for you. Hashtag Agora, second round book on strategy, Sedition, Subversion, and Sabotage, and Shane's own Vanu, a strategy for self-liberation. He also offers assistance to new authors throughout the publishing process, editing and proofreading, formatting for Kindle and paperback, and full-service audiobook productions. That's Liberty Under Attack Publications. Share your story, find your freedom. Always got to shout out Bad Moon Hemp. My beard's looking great because of their beard oil and beard balm, and they have a ton of other awesome hemp products. I'm keeping this pre-show pretty short. Just got to tell you that I'm going to be restructuring the Dank Pod-Stash Patreon. It's a little outdated right now, but we're going to get you some awesome perks and rewards, especially at the $50 tier. You get a t-shirt a month, So keep an eye out for that and check that out. And enjoy episode 56 of the Pod-Stash with Spike Cohen. Welcome to episode 56 of Enemy of the State's Dank Pod-Stash, here with Spike Cohen. What's up, man? It's good to kind of meet you over the internet, but not over the internet on video. So, hell yeah, I'm stoked to talk to you.
Hey, Nick, and hey, Enemies of the State Dank Pod-Stash podcast followers. How are you guys doing?
I hope they're doing good. They're here listening. Since this is our first kind of meeting, and I'm sure some people who follow the Pod-Stash know you as well, probably all of them. Tell everybody about what you do, though, just in case.
So my name is Spike Cohen. I am the co-owner of Muddied Waters Media. I'm also the co-host of the Muddied Waters of Freedom with my co-host Matt Wright, and I am the host of my own show, My Fellow Americans. And I'm just a general anarchist comment troll. If there's a police post celebrating a drug bust, I'm in there sharing statistics about the domestic abuse.
Yes.
Or Boogaloo memes. I'm pretty much so like if there's anything that makes you angry on the internet and you're an anarchist, I'm probably there commenting with something that might brighten your day. So that's generally what I do.
Hell yeah, that's great. What a resume. Especially that last part. Awesome.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, man. Well, you want to talk about some awesome stuff today. Stuff that, it's out there. People are getting fired up about it. I think it's one of the funniest things. The first thing that you sent me about libertarians selling out for Gabbard or Amish or whatever, that is always my favorite time of year. When people come out in support of different candidates from, first of all, outside of their party, but then when the anarchists start jumping on the bandwagon too, saying, most libertarian candidate ever,
Well, it's crazy. So it's like, so I get the libertarian pragmatists. So my show, I don't know audience-wise what your breakdown is. My show, my followers are anywhere from hard anarchists, have been for even before we were born, and have been anarchists a long time, all the way to more libertarian pragmatist constitutionalist types, and everything in between, and some even political unaffiliateds that are just interested in what I have to say. So I get the constitutionalist types getting into an Amash, Justin Amash, or even a Rand Paul, although they're all going to fail them even on that anyway. But I can see their mindset on that. These are the types that, are going to bring us back to what the Constitution was really meant to do, or whatever they'll say. I don't get the Tulsi one, but I can appreciate. I mean, we put some Tulsi memes on our page. I appreciate that she's a Democrat up on the Democrat stage, just blasting the other Democrats for being neocons and warmongers. So I can appreciate that and get a catharsis out of it. But that's a long road to hoe between me saying, oh, well, is she the most libertarian Democrat candidate? Sure. But that's like saying which, my slug has the highest vertical leap of all the other slugs. Like what, we're talking degrees of terrible here. So it's a crazy thing to me. Just out of curiosity, your audience is mostly anarchists, or you get kind of a broad spectrum of people?
It seems to be mostly anarchists. There were people who appreciated, what was it, when Arvin Vohra came on, and I guess we garnered enough libertarian attention to have his campaign reach out. I wasn't too stoked on that, but I took it just to see what it was all about. But yeah, I'd say it's more anarchists, black flag anarchists.
So do you get, because I've noticed, I mean, it's more in the libertarian circles, but are you seeing like a lot of anarchists? This is what the problem is. I have a show, so now I'm asking you questions. I'm like naturally interviewing you. Let me phrase this as a statement instead. I see. So most of the anarchists I know that are really into Tulsi, I think if you really distill it down, they just think she's hot.
Yes.
And then they enjoy that she's saying this stuff. But It's not as much like, I'm going to vote for her. It's more like, I want to like hate bang her and like tell her to repeat to me what she tweeted to Hillary or whatever. But not so much like actually supporting her. Whereas like libertarians, a lot of libertarians are like on the Tulsi wagon. And I'm like, and I guess it's really no different than the ones that jump on the Trump bandwagon. It's like, they're okay with Tulsi doing universal health care or, gun control and things like that because she's not a war hawk.
Right.
But I guess that's the same as like Trumperkists who like, or Trumpertarians who are okay with like, immigration control and red flag laws and, massively expanding the national debt and government, as long as he like cuts taxes.
Sure.
Or cuts whatever regulations they think he's cutting. So, I mean, I guess it's just a different flavor of abandoning principle.
Yeah, well, we're coming dangerously close to the whole not real anarchists thing here when we're trying to break down which quote unquote anarchists are actually favoring Tulsi Gabbard for any reason other than supposed hotness, which I liked the slug comparison because it's a low bar for hotness with politicians, man. And people, they love that top step of the lowest.
Yeah, so that's I didn't even think of that. So not only is she a low bar, is she having to clear a low hurdle for, I guess libertarian principles or freedom-based principles, but also in the hotness. Just the fact that she's like reasonably attractive makes her like a supermodel compared to the other, demonic looking people that are on the stage.
Yeah. I was going to say, shit, you could put me next to Hillary Clinton and they're going to be making hot memes, but that's even a stretch. But you get what I'm throwing down here. But yeah, I mean, I think I see more.
You're a lot more attractive than Hillary Clinton.
Thanks, man. I see a lot more people who are anarchists within the Libertarian Party, the people in the party who say that they're anarchists. And I think some are. I think there's some credence to the idea that the party is a pipeline to anarchy. There's some people in there subverting the idea of electing politicians and pushing them down, or I guess up, towards principles and the philosophy of anarchy. I think that's possible, but I think the anarchists in the party are the ones who are all about Tulsi Gabbard.
That's valid. I'd say I tend to agree with you on that. My thing with the Libertarian Party is this, because I have a lot. I'm actually not a member of the party, but I'm friends with a tremendous number of them. I'm actually going to be here's a plug. Here's my first plug for the night. I am going to be the host. Me and my co-host Matt Wright are going to be the hosts of the Libertarian Party presidential debate this coming Saturday in Florence, South Carolina.
Nice.
It's going to be not a lot of them, so it's going to be I have to do it in alphabetical order because I always forget someone if I don't. Ken Armstrong, Ken the Republican Armstrong. Man, I do this. Dan Berman, Dan Taxationist Theft Berman, Joe Jorgensen, who was the vice president candidate for the LP back in '96.
Okay.
Adam Kokesh, Kim Ruff, and Vermin Supreme. And I'm actually going to be staying in an Airbnb with Vermin Supreme that weekend, so that'll be fun. I'm actually, that's like my favorite part of it. I'm really looking forward to that.
That's gonna be a party.
But the Libertarian Party, I think it's gonna be fun. But the Libertarian Party, again, there's all different types within the party, but I respect the people in the party who are like, okay, this probably isn't gonna work. At the very least, we can yellow pill or black pill people or whatever into libertarianism, into anarchy, using this platform as a way to do it. And if we win some elections and get some people in that are less horrific than who would have been in there, you know, if they hadn't gotten elected, then great. I think the ones who are convinced that there is a strategy to get 50% of the vote, 40% of whatever they think would be required to win in a three-way race without massively compromising your principles in this current, for lack of a better word, society that we have in the US, I think they're deluding themselves somewhat.
Yes.
And I think the numbers show that they're deluding themselves. If Gary Johnson gets 3.25, you know, maybe a Vermin Supreme or a Kim can get that 5% that they want to get. But that's different from saying, and I'm not calling out anyone in particular, anyone on that, that's completely different from saying anyone on that slate, Vermin, Kim, Arvin, whomever, Dan, are going to be able to win a three-way race in a system that is set up to make sure that they have the hardest time even getting on the ballot in the first place. I think the only way you'd be able to do that is to somehow try to become Democrat light or Republican light. Sure. And maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But I think that I still respect what they're trying to do. I just think maybe that's not possible. But I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that they can, you know, President whomever becomes the next president, and you know, what is it? Adam Kokesh is going to walk in and say government is canceled and sign something saying the government's over, and then fire himself or whatever. Great. I hope you can do it.
Yeah. Well, I don't, because fuck presidents. I know what you're saying, and specifically fuck Kokesh.
Right.
Fuck Adam Kokesh with a fucking someone else's dildo. I don't fucking know. Fuck that guy. But I don't know this guy. I don't know him that well, but so many people have this negative, like this horrible, like even worse than Arvin. And like I said, I don't really know him that well. I just know what, you know, he wants his campaign platform is he's gonna close the government or something like that. But like, maybe you can give me some insight on this. What is the Adam Kokesh thing? So, crap, I can't remember the name of the mint. My friend Mitch was telling me about Silver something mint. There was a scam that he did minting silver coins to sell with like anarchy or something branded on them. I'm not sure exactly. And people ended up buying silver at silver spot price and getting shipped copper coins. And that was a long time ago. And then one of our first episodes when David was still on the show with me, he had sent what people are calling a white, I guess it would be a white hat hacker because the guy didn't go through with it, to fuck with Graham Smith from Voluntary Japan, both going after his family and financials and all that stuff. He was trying to recruit and pay someone to mess with Graham Smith because Graham Smith affected his, I guess, campaign donations from some scathing, some scathing articles he'd written on Steemit calling out Kokesh for a bunch of his bullshit. And it shifted a lot of the money away from Kokesh. And Graham and I have since had our disagreements, and he's decided to part ways with me over whatever. Let's not get into that, but I still support him not being fucked with in that way, especially by someone who claims to be an anarchist who wants to run for fucking president.
Okay, well, thank you for telling me that, because I didn't know any of that, but that would explain some of the vitriol I get when I mention Adam. I don't know much about him. He doesn't seem to have a lot of support, and so that would explain.
Yeah.
What you just said explains some of that.
Well, there's more, but nothing that I'm as well aware of, as informed on. And I don't think that the jerking off in parking lots memes are going to help his campaign at all. Because if he ever gets any traction, those are just going to be peppered all over social media.
That was the one thing I knew. And I'm like, I was like, okay, well, granted, that's never a good idea. Like, I'm not sure I would like be like, oh, this guy's great. He jerks off in parking lots. But the level of anger people had, and I'm like, I think there's more to this. I don't think it was just the parking lot situation. I think maybe he's jerked off a lot in public places, and maybe they're just really ain't like stop jerking off.
Are these all Walmart shills? Stay out of our parking lots.
Yeah, exactly. There's a big parking lot is coming after him.
Yeah.
This is all the property owner class saying, keep this guy off our lot.
Goddamn
That's funny.
parking
Yeah.
lot.
So no, I don't know,
complex.
but he's ruining our thing.
Yeah.
Everyone's scared to use our parking lots because this guy's like in there going to town.
Yeah.
But
so
I respect the.
I was just going to ask how much. So first of all, how did you get to be hosting this debate if you're not a part of the party? That's one thing. And how much autonomy do you have to troll while you're doing this?
These are excellent questions. So the answer to that is most of the leadership of the SCLP are followers of My Fellow Americans and Muddy Waters.
Okay.
And they love the show, and they're like, all right, you need to do this. I'm like, okay. And so so joining is free, and all I got to do is give them a piece of paper that says that I won't initiate force on anyone or something like that.
Sweet.
And I'm like, so I might actually join. I may actually join if for no other reason than like no one will be like, well, why is this guy not a member and he's doing it? But so that's the answer to that question, is that I have a lot of followers that are in the leadership that we're putting this debate together. And then the question, my autonomy, we're going to discover that together this coming Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern.
Hell yeah.
I don't know. I'm going to have some talks because I don't want to go there. I respect the people that are putting this together. And so even if we have differences of opinion on process and things like that, what I'm not going to do is go there and just blow up everything they've been trying to do. At the same time, I definitely want to know what my boundaries are and if those can be maybe pushed just a little. But yeah, I don't like, these are people I know and respect, so I'm not going to go in there and just destroy everything. But I definitely, they know me, they know what our shows are like. And so I would hope that like they're not expecting me to come in and give like C-SPAN color commentary.
Yeah.
Because I'm not the one to do that.
I can
come out of my mouth.
Literally see your inner troll fighting you as you're putting together that very diplomatic answer. Yeah. It's just bubbling up, and you're like, I respect them, but fuck. Yeah.
That's the thing, right? Like it's like, so if these weren't people, like, so if I were asked to go on C-SPAN and host like a local mayoral debate or some, first of all, why? Yeah. Why? What? Someone's going to get fired after this because this was not a good decision on anyone's part, except for mine to show up. But I would be a mess. Like it would be very well watched, but it would not. Any pretense of this being a respectable thing would be completely thrown out the window. And I don't think this is the same as that. But I also like actually respect the people that are doing this and respect the time and effort they put into it. So being a retired business owner, I do not. I appreciate the behind the scenes of what people do to produce things, and I'm not going to do that to someone. Like I'm not. But I'm definitely gonna like. It's not going to be. We're gonna like Matt's not flying all the way here from Florida to like pussyfoot around. So we're gonna have fun.
Hell yeah. Yeah, so that's going to be an interesting dynamic, and it's something I've always I don't think I've really checked out any of the debates with Vermin on stage with like people who are serious about politics. And I don't know a lot about Kim Ruff other than she seems nice, whatever. I know she has some supporters and whatnot. And you mentioned, I don't remember whose name it was, but the Republican. I mean, Dan wears a big yellow fucking hat.
Oh,
and
Ken
taxation.
Armstrong. Ken Armstrong.
Yeah. And has a tie that says taxation is theft. And we have already talked about Kokesh.
Right.
Like there's some jokesters up there and some scum. And then there's some serious people. So it's got to be weird for those people sharing a stage with Vermin Supreme or Dan in his hat and stuff. I'm always interested in seeing how they react to that. And I also love when, you know, the entertainers, the crowd pleasers bring up valid points and just floor these quote unquote serious politicians. That's great.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. So, so it's very interesting with Vermin. I had him on my show, and it was not what I originally expected because we had a lot of time of like goofing around. I originally was like, listen, I don't, because when I said that he was going to be my guest, all of my Libertarian Party followers, or a good number of them who weren't Vermin supporters, were like, you have to nail him on what he's doing, and you know, you have to. So like, so for those who don't know, the 4 planks of the Vermin Supreme platform, and this has been going on since he's been running for president since like the 90s, are free ponies for everyone, mandatory toothbrushing, harnessing zombies for perpetual energy, and going back in time to kill baby Hitler. And there were people who wanted me to bring him on and explain how those things violated the NAP.
Get out,
and
dude.
I was like, why can't I have this guy on and we like goof around talking about ponies, right? So I was I'm like, this is going to be a pony episode. We're going to be very, very tongue in cheek with this. I'm going to play the straight man and whatever. And then he ended up like at least half of the interview, he was being serious about being an anarchist, what that meant to him, what he has done as an anarchist, like actually living, like literally living in mutual aid collectives in the woods and stuff like that he's done in the past. His work on reducing conflict during riots and protests he's been to, and harm reduction and all of these things, and how he wants to allow the Libertarian Party to use his much higher popularity than the other candidates to get, you know, to get that 5% that they've been trying to get for so long and all of this. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is a way more serious interview than I thought it was going to be. So I'm not sure I would not quantify him as a serious candidate, quote unquote. He's just treating the electoral process like the joke it deserves to be treated like. Yeah. And so it's like his campaign slogan is a vote for me is a vote thrown away. Yeah. And the statement of that is, you're voting for me because you don't give a crap who wins, and you don't care if your vote isn't going to, you know, one of the major party candidates. And, you know, so let's just burn this whole thing down and make it show what a joke it is. And also, let me tell you about the Libertarian Party and you know, the platform and how great it is and blah, 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 blah. So if anything, I see him and Kim and even Dan and people like that as more serious candidates than, for example, and I don't want to name specific names, but a Republican or Democrat who have, you know, added either, if it's a Republican, legalizing drugs, or if they're a Democrat, you know, being against gun control, they've added that to their platform, but they're still supporting perpetual war.
Right.
They're still supporting, you know, 80 to 90% of what the party they left is supporting. Maybe they're serious, but they're treating the efforts of the people that built this party into being some kind of like alliance between ultra minarchists and anarchists into something that it wasn't supposed to be. So if anything, I have more respect for a Vermin or a Kim or someone like that than one of these people who comes in, you know, and tries to look like a professional politician and is talking about constitutionalism or whatever.
Sure.
Because that's not what the party's supposed to be about.
Right. And I haven't put a ton of research into the beginnings of the party. From what I know, it was taking a piece of the, I guess, the political stage pie to promote anarchy was the original thought behind this. So that makes sense. I can respect libertarians who do that. I can respect that. That's fine. I don't like to, use any of the state apparatus whatsoever to do any outreach, anything like that. Because even if you're voting for Vermin Supreme, there's somebody getting paid with stolen dollars, with blood money, pretty much, to count those votes. So, and you know, there's compromises everywhere. And it does the good outweigh the bad. And it's interesting because that's another thing you had mentioned to me in that message about letting go of your lingering or clinging on statist remnants, you know, remnants of statist thought.
Yes.
And there's so many people who are so fucking close in not, you know, everywhere, but the Libertarian Party too, and just gloss over facts like that. Like, who do you think's counting these votes? Who's funding? If you get on a debate with Democrats and Republicans, how is all this being funded? I think that's one of the main things people are cling on to is ignorance of the funding, or just, you know, choosing to ignore it.
It is, and that's an excellent point. I mean, you're harnessing a system. Even if the argument is that, well, yes, voting is violence, but I'm voting in self-defensive violence. I'm voting against tax increases. I'm voting against whatever. You're correct. The actual system itself, the entire system is one of theft and forced, forced compliance. So distilling it down to a smaller group of people, this would be a debate between two hostages. Mm-hmm. And, you know, there's a group of hostages that are being held hostage. And the hostage taker comes in and says, you know, do you want sandwiches, or do you want, you know, us to give you dirt or something like that? Or do you want us to give you like crappy food that's been sitting outside all day long? And one person says, yes, this is being forced on us, but if I'm being allowed to vote, I'm going to vote for the sandwich because I'm at least reducing the harm that's being done to me. And then the other person, and they're also being principled, obviously, you could argue they're being more principled, is saying, well, I don't want any of this. By me voting for the sandwich, I'm giving legitimacy. I'm granting legitimacy to the system, and I'm allowing this person who's holding me hostage to be, you know, to think or to tell others that, you know, that this is okay, that this is being done. Or even if there were a third person saying, well, I'm going to vote for neither of those things. I'm going to vote for something completely different. You know, I want, you know, a gourmet meal, knowing I'm not going to get it. But I'm still going to do it because, you know, it's afforded to me to be able to say that. So I get all of those arguments. I personally don't vote. I could see voting for someone that wants to burn the whole thing down, but I haven't voted ever since I became an anarchist. Ever since I took the real plunge into anarchy, I went very quickly from thinking that Rand Paul and Ted Cruz were maybe good transitional steps to anarchy. Once I realized that was all garbage, I pretty quickly just fell off the whole thing and was like, no, we're not doing any of this. So yeah.
Yeah, I like that hostage situation example, because I always, one of the biggest bones I have to pick with voting is, or voters, I guess, is the people who come in with their arguments for defensive voting and invoke the almighty Spooner. And I've written an article about how his supposed argument in favor for defensive voting is not that at all, and talk with people about that all the time. And the conversation usually gets reduced down to is a gun to the head scenario, so that points can be made, right? And then you think, well, you can only get shot or you can take the gun. But I like the hostage situation one with sandwiches and old crappy food or whatever, because then you see the agorists come out from the corners and start stealing a little bit here and there when they can, and creating a gray market of food or a black market of food.
Exactly.
You know, and making their way out of there, getting the strength to leave.
Focusing the resources on trying to get out of their chains so that they can, you know, to try to take over the hostage, overwhelm the hostage taker when he walks in or something. Yeah. So it's obviously different mindsets. And I find this a big determining factor of where you stand on the agorist, big igloo, or, you know, vote to maintain the system, you know, where you fall on that spectrum of how you want to see anarchy. A lot of it comes from, and this isn't, I mean, there are all, I'm speaking in very strong generalities here. There are people across the board, but typically it's your current socioeconomic standing that affects that question. So I will admit, as someone who is relatively well off financially and who is, I have, for those who don't know, I have MS, And so I have a drug that I have to get as an infusion every month. So, you know, the Bujahideen, whatever they're calling, what started as Boogaloo and is now the Wiggy Biggy Big Lou or whatever,
the
it just
hootenanny
keeps changing what they're calling it. The hootenanny doesn't, I will admit it doesn't appeal as much to me, because I think, okay, will this lead to a free society? Sure. Yes. Will, in the meantime, or could it potentially lead to a free society? Yeah. What's it going to look like in the meantime? Would I survive that? And so I find that I become less, less chest puffed out now that I have some skin in the game to lose.
Yeah.
So I tend to favor a more peaceful agorism standpoint, and with the idea that if there are also people that are harnessing the democratic system to try to yellow pill people or whatever, fine, that's good. That's, everyone's trying different ways. And if there are people who are using, the potential for an actual direct action, violent conflict to maybe keep some people humble, that would otherwise be more tyrannical, that's fine as well. But I'm certainly not someone that's like wanting to go up to the hills and get ready for the next Ruby Ridge, because I'm not built for it.
I hear you. I'm really glad that you're sharing that perspective too, because I also favor over anything else the peaceful agora strategy. I love me some Boogaloo memes, and the thing, the Boogaloo is appealing. It's appealing to a lot of people for a lot of different reasons, and I think one of the main ones is frustration. And I think that's why a lot of people are into it now, is frustration, because there's frustration everywhere, not only in the States, but look at all the different places that are rioting and stuff. These people are boogalooing. They're kicking off the hootenanny, and it's because they're frustrated with what's going on. And that's a huge concern. That's the caveat that I try to bring up all the time when I talk with people about the boogaloo, is that people are going to get hurt. People are going to die. Not only bad people, but people who fall on the wrong side of side of circumstance, people who aren't ready, people who can't be ready, it's going to happen. And a lot of people don't realize that there are going to be innocent casualties, and that bugs me. But at the same time, I guess that's a weird way to put it. At the same time, I can understand the frustration. You don't think there's anything else we can do. And I don't think that it would be lasting peace or freedom by any means. I think, it would just get turned into whatever the majority after that wanted. If we were lucky, maybe libertarian, probably libertarian right, libertarian conservative, but who knows?
Conservatarian. This is my analogy. This is your analogy episode, me just dropping one analogy. So I always tell people, if I were to snap my fingers right now and make all government disappear, all of it disappears, whether that means the structure of government or all of the politicians, whatever. Government is gone. There is no more government. We are living in anarchy in our time. The very first thing that the remaining people would do is look at me and go, what the hell did you just do? And they go right back to building a government. And more than likely, if history is a guide, that government, those governments would look way worse than what we have even now. More than likely. Maybe some things would be better, but overall, we're moving towards the inertia is there for ever increasing government, with often the only thing stopping it being some arcane statutory blocks and limits put in place, which just are a matter of taking more time to get over it. But it's not going to be a lasting anarchy, which is why, to me, that's what appeals again with agorism and with the idea of changing people's minds, because it doesn't take every single person on earth supporting anarchy, but it takes more than 1% of us? Like what percentage of people out there, like what percentage of people that have given up on the system, don't even vote, think the whole thing's a mess? Very high, actually higher than the number of people who vote. The number of people who want government to disappear, including the welfare state, the infrastructure state, the things that they've been conditioned since we were little kids and told to, find a cop if we're being harassed by a stranger. Like, those people aren't ready for that. So why are we going to start a violent conflict knowing the history of what that brings. We obviously, if history is a guide, and without, doing that wasn't real anarchy or whatever, we clearly need to try something different.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be, a violent anarchist revolution. There may be pockets of resistance like that, but I think much more important is people just every day opting out and finding a way to participate in gray and black markets in a sustainable way, not just as some immediate act of rebellion, but as like, this is how I'm going to live. I'm going to teach my children to live this way, and to teach them that, authority isn't something that is, just granted because of a badge or a piece of paper. Authority and the respect and trust that comes from that is something that's earned as a result of providing someone value and proving yourself as someone that can be trusted. And it's not permanent. So if you've granted someone, some level of authority or respect or trust or integrity in your life, it's because of what they've done for you, and it can change if they don't continue to act that way. So why wouldn't we treat the police that way?
Right.
Why wouldn't we treat politicians that way? So it's a learning process and a teaching process. That, to me, it might not be as cathartic as thinking about, some like revolution against some police department, but in my mind, it's actually more powerful and more lasting to actually change people's minds.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And that's the thing that sold me on agorism back when I started reading Konkin, is his kind of backwards time lapse from a free society back to the state, with pockets of agorism growing smaller, and eventually they're just the pockets they started out as in a society with a state. And you think that's the way to build it, like everything you're saying. And then boogaloo, once agorist pockets of networking or communities or whatever get to the point where you can defend yourself, because that's something I don't think people think about either. Anarchists in the boogaloo aren't necessarily going to be super popular. There's other people besides anarchists who want to boogaloo. And that's, you're going to have a target on you if you're advertising that, just like any other conflict, any other ideology that people, or, political, whatever that people subscribe to, and they're out there fighting, and there's different groups. Just because you're not the big bad enemy doesn't mean that you're not on the radar to be targeted. That's just.
And a potentially potentially a much larger threat down the road. You've got alt-right people sharing boogaloo memes.
Yeah,
okay, great.
Exactly.
They want to overthrow this state, but why?
Yep.
Because because this state isn't, in their minds, protecting their race, heritage, culture, whatever. It's letting in the dirty, the dirty mud people, or whatever that, these inferior people and their inferior cultures, and muddying our lands and whatever. Like, right, exactly. Like, these aren't our allies. Are they thinking of, so a perfect example. Yeah, they're ready to fight the police over gun control or red flag laws, but these are the people who get mad when, like, someone shoots at an ICE, an ICE outpost or camp or whatever. Sure. Like, they're not against the police state. Yeah. They're against how the police state is currently negatively affecting them personally. That's completely different from being against the entire coercive system, not just the police state, but the warfare state, the welfare state, the regulatory state, which we don't talk about. So everyone talks about, I feel like I'm going off on a million things.
Go for it.
Because I'm usually the one that's like keeping the interview, in a very strict thing. But
we don't have that here.
We don't talk
Bring
about
it
the
on.
Regulatory state. Okay, good. We don't talk about the regulatory state. We talk about it with little bits, but we don't talk about the fact that the reason most people are poor is because of a series and system, not just of big, acute aggressions like the bombing of Black Wall Street in Tulsa in the 1920s, the big stuff like that, but little things like building codes and licensing restrictions and things like that make it increasingly difficult. Wage laws, all of these things that take more and more of the bottom rungs off of the economic ladder, so that if you're down here in the bottom of that ladder, unless you're one of these people that just has an incredibly impressive vertical jump, you've got this, this great drive and unflappable nature that most people just don't naturally have, you're going to be stuck there. So of course you're going to need welfare.
Absolutely.
And so, we talk about ending the welfare state, but in the same way that we don't need a state if we aren't convinced that we, that we need it. We don't need a welfare state if the state isn't imposing its regulatory state on us. So in my mind, my allies are people that recognize the entire system is a problem, not just red flag laws, not just forced association laws, which is things that the right doesn't like, or not just, systemic racism or war in non-white countries, which the left generally recognizes as wrong. But the entire thing, this is all different organs of the same monster. So
it's so much easier to find those allies in real life conversations than it is online as well. People tend not to dig their heels in as hard in real life. They seem more open. I bring that up, I think, every show now, but it's the positivity that I'm holding on to from those conversations, because just, God damn it, is social media fucking toxic all the time. And it's even among, fellow anarchists and stuff, among our circles that we run around in here. And it's too much. That's why I hardly ever post on my personal page, and I'd much rather go talk face to face with people and get these people who are on the right or the left to find a common ground with me in something. It's just so much better. And, you talk to these people, you got some boogaloo allies too. Who knows?
You never know. And the thing is this. So every time I argue on the internet, I instantly regret it. And then I continue doing it. And it happens pretty much every day.
Yeah.
And so I as I'm doing it, I'm like, this is a waste of time. What are you doing? Go outside and meet someone. But I'm just, someone is wrong on the internet and I have to correct that, even though it doesn't happen. But I have to at least make it known that they were wrong. If someone in their life had to tell them they were wrong. But so when I was diagnosed with MS, I owned a pretty successful business. I was right at the point where I was going to be franchising and doing the whole thing. For your left anarchist friends, they're going to hate this. But I was very much, I was reaching the point where I was literally just managing the company itself. It was a very successful thing. Diagnosed with MS after the left side of my body went completely numb, or almost completely numb. And so I went through the treatment, was diagnosed with MS, and I said to them, "What can I do?" And they said, "You need to reduce your stress." And I thought, okay, well, this business is killing me. I already knew that even before this. I just was hoping I could stick it out for another 10, 15 years and then, ride on easy street. And so I sold off the company and am now focusing. It also freed me up to be as open as I want about my political and philosophical beliefs in public now, whereas before I was a little more quiet about it. But one of the things it made me do was, by forcing me to look at the things that were creating stress in my life, and as a matter of my personal health, medical health, removing them, I go outside and meet people more. And I am more actually social with people in actual real life. And the same person online who will call you a cuck or a bootlicker or an anti-American, or a whatever, godless, horrible thing, or a Nazi or communist, whatever, call you all these names and say the horrible things about you and look on your profile for things they can screenshot to throw in your face and say, "Yeah, you schmuck, look at this, I bet you love your grandma, but you don't want her to have Medicare," or whatever. The actual human beings that are doing this on their phone. If you met this person in person, if you met this person in public and had this conversation, it might get heated, but both of you are going to show a little bit more. Typically, there's some just people that have no outside skills, but most of us are going to be able to have a more, at least something remotely approaching an empathetic discussion where we actually care about the other person, or can at least pretend to, because we're standing in front of them, and you don't go, "Oh, well, you love your grandma, huh, schmuck?" And then you're still standing there in front of them like that. You're not 100 miles away on your phone or whatever. So I have found I was a very cynical person. I used to say, 95% of people are just total morons. They don't know anything. They're stupid, and you don't even need to listen to what they have to say. And I do think most people are ill-informed about important things. But the more time I actually spend with people, the more I realize, you're not the genius you think you are. And there are people who get things that you don't. You may totally get politics and philosophy, but they get stuff you don't get. They're actually appreciating their life while you're arguing on the internet about the stickiness of property rights or whatever.
Right.
And maybe there's a wisdom in that. So that's something I would say to people that are maybe becoming Malthusian just from interacting with people on the internet, is maybe interact with some people in real life. You'll probably have a better experience than you are with those exact same people on the internet.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, the 95% of people that you were talking about, it's sometimes they just haven't taken the time to develop their ideas, because I think most people have ideas of freedom and are pissed off about government. Well, I mean, we can fucking see it. Like I mentioned earlier, the riots everywhere in different countries, and the unrest here that happens and whatnot. These people, everybody that's not necessarily an anarchist but could be an anarchist, which is fucking everybody, has just not taken the time either to, do some self-inflection, or hasn't heard about this stuff. But people don't want to go out and hurt people and take their stuff generally. And then as far as talking about...
Generally not.
Yeah, and as far as, getting into the "you love your grandma" insults, which is, people would say stupid shit like that. When you see the viral videos of people talking face to face doing that, it's a manufactured situation most of the time. There's a bunch, it's like a fucking Steven Crowder "change my mind" video, or there's already a ton of tension because it's two opposing extreme groups against each other, and there's just two people arguing, and of course there's cameras there and whatnot. But you go to a bar. I've been to a lot of sketchy fucking bars, and that's what I like. I like the dive bars, and you can have conversations with people that don't end up in violence or yelling at each other. I find myself talking to these people about some of the deeper parts of agorism and anarchy and stuff, who had never heard about it before, and it's not a slugfest, even if they're wearing a Trump shirt or something. Or at work, talking, if you go to a workplace and you talk to people, it's the same thing. It comes out in a better conversation, a lot of times more respect for each other, whether you disagree or agree, and it's so much better than the toxic environment of the internet.
Oh, absolutely. And you strike me as at least somewhat of an empathetic guy. And just, I've never actually talked with you before now, but just your posts and watching your episodes of your show and stuff like that, you strike me as someone that is able to meet someone where they are to some extent when you're talking with them and figure out where they're coming from. And that's also a big part, because if we're going to have anarchy, it's going to require more anarchists. Mm-hmm. Bottom line.
Yep.
And you've got a lot of people, like you said, really almost anyone can be an anarchist. In fact, I personally, my theory is a lot of the top people in government are anarchists who live in anarchy and impose the state on us.
Right.
For they're like the ultimate
Warlords.
egoists. They're just like, they're like weaponized egoists who are just like, you know what, my perceived self-interest is screw all these other people, and I'm going to convince them that we need this, prison that I'm going to outdoor prison I'm going to impose on their entire society so I can live however the hell I want to. Which I wouldn't be surprised with that. But when you talk to people and meet them where they are, a Trump supporter, a Democrat supporter of Buttigieg, apparently there are some of them supporters. They're, these people that support the people that are resisting Trump right now are having a very immediate, acute experience of distress about government and how powerful it is and how much it can negatively affect them and others if just some guy who's a schmuck is in there. And they haven't quite threaded the needle that Obama was pretty much the same thing. He just was smoother in his delivery, and the media liked him, and he was a cool guy, and he whatever. But like, pretty much it's the same thing. But they're getting to experience, because they hate this guy so much, because they hate Trump so much on a visceral level, because of the kind of person he is outside of politics. They're experiencing this distress that a lot of us had to experience with a politician at some point before we thought, and then watching the opposition pretend to fight against them and ultimately just do the same thing they're doing before we step back and go, wait a second, this is all garbage. So when you're talking to a Trump supporter, a Tulsi supporter, or whatever, a MASH supporter, even a Rand Paul supporter, yeah, you can go at them and be like, well, Trump is, the modern day version of a fascist dictator, or you can go after, Tulsi and her hypocrisy on certain things, or, the fact that she's, I guess, homophobic or whatever. Like, you can go after these things and make them cling to their belief systems that they aren't even fully wedded to in the first place, or you can meet them where they are and help sow those seeds of distrust of government and just this innate sense that something's wrong here.
Yeah.
And start, at their level. I mean, I talked to my dad is a boomer Trump supporter. And he knows when we start talking, by the end of the conversation, he's going to be agreeing with me that this entire thing is a farce. We don't even need a government. And, you can have those conversations with people.
It's because you didn't say, shut the fuck up, boomer, right in the middle of the conversation.
That's the thing, right? Like, yeah, I would do that anyway. But I mean, even if I were like that with other people, just because it's my dad. But yes, I could absolutely treat people, because I mean, there's for everyone. I mean, my dad has 50 million people behind him that are just like him. Yeah. And if I were to treat people like that way, that's just going to dig them in their heels on their, because when you attack someone's politics or their religion or their lack of religion or the things that make up the strongest parts of their belief system, they've innately tied that into their self-worth. So when you're saying this guy's a dick and you're a dick for supporting him, what they're hearing isn't just this guy's a dick and you're a dick for supporting him. They're hearing you at your very core have an irreparable problem and I don't like you because of it.
Right.
Even if that's not what you're saying, that's what they're hearing. And so, if you want to make a bunch of enemies, do that. If you want everyone to hate you and any idea you have, definitely do that to them. That'll help.
Yeah. And, being face to face with someone, the proximity of being in proximity to an actual human, you realize that you are talking to a person. You're asking a person about, what do you think? What do you feel about this? Versus the facade that you see on social media. Because at that point, you pretty much are. You're talking to an ANCOM. You're talking to a Trump supporter. You're talking to a Yang Gang, something like that. And you're not talking necessarily to a person until you know these people outside of it. Like, I've met some very good friends, like the guy on the last show, Daniel Johnson. And now I know I'm talking to a person. It's hard sometimes to realize that with his 500 socks and different profile pictures, but that's what really sets you up for.
I saw that. I saw this whole thing.
Yeah, that's what sets you up for changing minds or meeting in the middle, meeting them on their grounds, whatever you have. Any kind of positive interaction is realizing that these are people.
Yeah. If nothing else, even if you don't change their mind one bit, they at least realize that you're not a caricature and your idea is not a caricature. Because if their exposure to anarchy is people, when they're not busy calling everyone bootlickers, they're also arguing with each other over stuff like, if hierarchies in and of themselves are coercive, or if there's such a thing as a voluntary hierarchy, and the nature of property rights, whether you can own land or not, and like these like philosophical things. So libertarianism, anarchism specifically, and libertarianism in general, is naturally a very empathetic message. You own yourself, you own your labor, you own the product of your labor. No one should be able to take from you and rob you or harm you, and you shouldn't do that to others. It is inherently a very empathetic and, in my mind, a kind message. When it's presented as, you're a bootlicker, why don't you get that boot out of your mouth, and Skycloth won't magic if you don't bow to it, jerk. And and I do these things. Like, I say this to someone who does it, and then immediately it's like, why are you like, as soon as I do it, I'm like, why are you doing this? None of these police supporters were just impressed with you like sharing memes about the domestic abuse rate or whatever. That's pure catharsis, and you're not actually achieving anything positive there. But when you do that, you're immediately putting them on the defensive, and when you present it that way, it doesn't come off as empathetic anymore. It sounds selfish. It sounds like the reason you don't want government is you just don't want anyone to touch your stuff and you don't want to help other people. And, if when you're talking about poverty, it always goes back to, well, welfare is wrong and I shouldn't have to pay for, I get the message of there's no such thing as a free lunch, or, I shouldn't have to pay for your health care. Great. And those are true but they're presented in such a way that it isn't about the philosophical underpinnings of government, that, you know, these are coercive things and it actually makes things worse. It just sounds like you don't want to have to help other people.
Right.
And
that's a message.
It sounds the opposite of empathetic.
That sounds like the Republican message almost right now too, which is probably why there's some massive, massively, why it's massively unpopular, why it's becoming massively unpopular. And it's funny just watching the swing go back and forth, because that's all it is. Every 4 or 8 years, it's just the pendulum swinging back from left to right, and people don't realize it. But yeah, for sure, dude. Fuck, is there anything else you wanted to cover, man? I think we could probably go for like 10 hours, but we're coming up on that hour.
I can do several to my wife's utter horror. I could be in we're in the guest room where I set up that's our guest and pool table room, and I could be in here for like 4 hours.
Oh yeah.
Easy. But I'm not going to do that to my wife, or to you, or your followers, or my followers, or my back. Yeah, I'm not going to do this to anyone involved. I'm not going to do that. So, no, I mean, I know we're going to talk on the Patreon after this, but no, I just, you know, my whole thing is, you know, get out there and talk to people, and, you know, you don't have to let them drag you to their level on what they think, but just understand that they're coming from that's actually one thing I want to say.
Sure.
And then we can do the Patreon is, that like the average Trump supporter doesn't really hate anyone more or less than you probably do. Mm-hmm. They've come to the conclusion, often that conclusion has been presented to them without them having much ability to you know, think outside of it, that this is the best way moving forward,
right?
Or this is the best option that's been presented. These are people that are you know, struggling just like you are. Most of them are struggling to make ends meet, or if they're retired, they're struggling with health and you know, existential things we don't even think about except for ourselves, but we don't realize everyone else is going through that too. And just a little bit of empathy and understanding that, like, not everyone out here is you know, battling something, and, you know, maybe just pretend you're talking to yourself before you became an anarchist.
Yep.
And ask yourself, how would you have liked someone to talk to you? So that's really all I have to say.
That's awesome. Hell yeah. That's a perfect place to end this, besides plugging all your stuff. And I'll put links for everything that you do in the description and whatnot for the show so people can find it, but tell them where it's at.
Okay, so all of our stuff is on muddiedwatersmedia.com. We are on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on Instagram, we're on the Float app. Are you on Float?
I'm not. I got an invite code. I've just been too lazy.
Look into it.
Okay.
Their streaming video is the highest quality out of any of the social media platforms. And there's an ability, we make more money on Float with our live streams than we do on all the other platforms combined because of crypto donations that people can make. So we're on Float, we're on Anchor, we're on all the podcasting things. But if you go to muddiedwatersmedia.com or search out Muddied Waters Media on your favorite social media platform of choice, you will find us. The Muddied Waters of Freedom on Tuesday nights, and My Fellow Americans is not every Wednesday night. It's usually at least once or twice a month, but those are on Wednesday nights. But they're all on there, so be sure to check that out. Again, this Saturday at 7 p.m. Be sure to tune in because we'll be sharing it on the Muddied Waters Media page as well, but it'll be on the South Carolina Libertarian Party page. We'll get to see together just how much trolling I'm allowed to do.
Yes.
In the hosting of the, I'm not the moderator. I wish I was the moderator, but I am the host. Me and Matt are the hosts. So we'll be doing the color commentary in between and before and after. We'll see exactly how much I can get away with, and then how much I can push just past what I can get away with. So be sure to tune into that on 7 p.m. Eastern. Other than that, thanks for having me on. I'm real excited.
Hey, yeah, thank you, man.
Excited to have a chance to come on.
Yeah, this was great. This was awesome. Yeah, and hopefully anybody listening that does go and checks out you guys hosting that debate can name drop the Pod-Stash and tell Kokesh to quit being such a fucking jerk off. So that would be great. Awesome. All right. Well, if you want,
all comments are welcome.
Hell yeah. If you want to hear Spike answer the Patreon question, which some of you know is, what would you tell the world if you had everybody's full attention for a couple minutes, hacked into the mainframe, hacker voice, I'm in, and you can tell anybody or the whole world, anything, what would you tell them? That's going to be on the Patreon page. Go to patreon.com/theDankPod-Stash and you'll be able to find it. Hey, thanks again for being here. Thanks everybody for watching, listening, wherever you're at. And remember, total freedom, no exceptions.